Good morning. Welcome to the last meeting of the Board of Supervisors for 2013, unless we have an emergency or urgency. And if so, call to all of me. Please stand if you can and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We had two closed sessions before coming in here. Both of them are on the agenda, and there was no action taken in item 1 or in item 2 closed sessions. I'd like to move to public comments. If anyone has anything they'd like to address to the board that is under our jurisdiction and not on the agenda, please come forward, and you'll have 5 minutes. We'll go to a maximum of 30 minutes.
Good morning, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. I know I come here year-long and complain and whine about things, but once a year I try to set aside a time when I actually show appreciation and show gratitude for something. And I want to thank you folks for having this agenda here, this arena where we may be able to come and speak to you and vent whatever frustrations that we have. But also this place has allowed me the opportunity to meet different people that I never would have met before and actually make some friends. I don't make friends easily. I'm a crabby, bitter, pessimistic old woman. So it's hard for me to reach out and bond with somebody. But this year, I made a friend. I'm really proud of myself. Very much unlike me, where I'm a negative person, this is a very positive person, and I think it makes a good balance. This person sees the glass more than half full, brimming over, overflowing with positive energy, and it balances my negative energy. And I'd just like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to meet Marty Crane, who I had heard about for years, but I had never met in person, and who has done very much to extend herself and give me the opportunity to say that I've made a friend. So thank you, folks.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Maybe you can make some New Year resolutions, and we'll see a different Mrs. Newman next year.
I'll come back next with the resolution.
Anyone else who has an item they'd like to address?
Joe Kelly, what I'm about to say here to start is not necessarily in your purview, but it's something that I want you to remember for later in today's hearing. We can build spaceships to send people to outer space for exploration. We can build spacesuits to protect them when they're in outer space. Remember that. At the end of last year, after the election, or I should say after the election last year, there were exit interviews on the Calaveras Enterprise on public access TV, and 2 of them were done by the exiting supervisors. But the one that got me the most was Supervisor Tryon's exit interview. He expressed that there was an agenda, he had an agenda for this county, and that there was a group of people that were within a cabal of that agenda. And what he had been willing to do, if one member of a director hadn't have been kept here, that he would have not run for office again. But he had an agenda, and the other people that were with him, he himself, Tryon, Tofinelli, the former CAO, and apparently the Director of Public Works were part of this. But there were more. I believe there were at least 3 more. So I would ask on this day of your last meeting, hopefully, of 2013, Madam Chair, were you part of that cabal? Do you know what that agenda was? Was it ever discussed with you? Because I think, as the special meeting you folks just had, you went through your Brown Act training. The very first section of the Brown Act basically states, we the people, the sovereign people, have the right to know what you folks are thinking and doing, supposedly on our behalf. So I ask you, Madam Callaway, did you know of it? Were you part of it?
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to address to the board? Okay, we're going to move to consent agenda. These items are normally routine, non-controversial. They will be acted on and one motion unless any member of the board, staff, or public would like to pull the consent agenda item.
I make a motion to approve.
Anybody?
Second.
I have a motion by Supervisor, pardon?
Are you calling for items to be pulled?
Yes.
Number 7?
Number 7.
9, please.
9. Okay. Any others? I have a motion by Supervisor Wright, a second by Supervisor Spellman for the balance. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. Item 7.
I apologize. I do not have a computer, but this is really interesting. The operation of a recovery and wellness center for adults with serious mental illness. Is there, I'm sure there must be on the internet something, but could you briefly explain, are we going to be opening a center in Calaveras County? And is this a day program? Is this what I heard from before? There might be a day program, or is this an overall facility, and how much money is involved?
Okay. It's a fair question.
Good morning, Mary Sawicki, Director of Calaveras Health and Human Services. There is an existing program called the Living Room. It's across the street from Calaveras Human Services. This is a program that's in existence. The agreement and the budget is for $216,890. And this particular item is just to shift some of the money for some additional food for the individuals out of things like equipment and some of the additional rent, and also for things like stipends, etc.
Non-general fund.
It's not. No.
This is all grant funds, and this is for our severely mentally ill adults.
Thank you. Any other further discussion on this? May I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Edson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So it goes. Item number 9.
Joe Kelly, according to this is to clarify the title, duties, powers, and other issues related to the Calaveras County Fish and Game Commission. Years ago, I had a little problem with the Fish and Game Commission in that a member of it, under the color of authority, used the paperwork with their heading on it to address something I was doing. And that's how I got to meet Alice Raines, because I called Alice Raines and asked her if that individual was given authority by the committee, which he was not. So he did something without the approval of the committee. When I brought it before the board at the time, away it went. Never heard from again. So I thought this would be a prime opportunity, since I did read this stuff, and I don't remember seeing anything in there restricting color of authority without approval of the committee. So I would ask that this be addressed in this thing to assure that it will never happen again, because it is a time-consuming, and it was a rather fun thing for me anyway.
Well, I'm glad it was fun for you.
Most things I do, I try to make fun
Good.
of.
I
Not
don't
fun
know
of,
if
fun
it was
out of.
I don't know if it was the same one, but there was one. I was on the Fish and Game Commission, and action was taken to the commissioner that acted outside the authority that the commission has. And under this, and maybe Supervisor Pawnee wants to address it, but all the duties in the section shall comply with ordinance, resolutions, rules, and regulations adopted by the board. So,
Actually, Madam Chair, I can address that.
Okay.
I did attend to the Fish and Game Commission meetings. We did have a discussion about that. There was an issue that they raised and asked for legal advice on, and it is going to be addressed in their bylaws, which they are working on right now, and those bylaws will come back to the board for approval at the beginning of next calendar year.
So what will be the consequence if somebody goes outside the rules?
Well, the rules shall state that if you want to provide a comment on something as an individual, you obviously have the ability to do that, but there needs to be a vote by the Fish and Game Commission in order to send anything on that particular letterhead. So if somebody violates that, then the options available to the board are to remove somebody from the Fish and Game Commission, or they can address it again at the Fish and Game Commission. But I got the distinct impression they all understood it very well.
So this was never in their bylaws before, this color of authority concept?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments by the board? Supervisor Ponte?
No comments. I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion by Supervisor Ponte, second by Supervisor Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay. I'd like to move to the regular agenda items. Item 14 is code compliance. Is code compliance here?
I do not see them.
We move pretty fast. So, okay, let's go down to item 17. Oh, I think we're moving faster than staff. Oh, that's right, Billy, thank you very much. We've already passed public comment, but please come up and make your comments.
And I do apologize.
That's all right.
I'm out of breath from trying to hurry.
No, that's
My name is Billy MacArthur. I'm from Murphy's. Thank you for your time this morning. I will make it less than 5 minutes, if at all possible. First, I would like to congratulate Mr. Edson. Chris, it's great to see you here, and Debbie Ponte. For your election, it's been that long since I've been to a board meeting, which in more ways than one is probably very good for you. The reason that I am here this morning is my husband and I are in the process of adding an accessory dwelling to our home. We are building like a basement unit. I think the state refers to them as a mother-in-law unit. The state in I think the late 80s passed a state bill that said they wanted to encourage counties to encourage accessory dwellings to make housing, affordable housing, more available in the counties. And because they didn't get the response that they were hoping for through permits and things like that, they did an update on it, I think in 2003. And in 2003, what they're saying is that we want these houses to be built in effect to reduce the housing problems, especially for the elderly, for the lower income. The reason that I'm here is in the process of doing this, there's a lot of things that the county has to do, and most of them my husband and I, although we may not agree with them, are agreeable to them. The one that really caught me was your well capacity test. And the well capacity test says that we have to show the county that our well can pump 14,400 gallons of water within a 24-hour period of time. I not only think that's excessive, I think it's unconscionable. In a moment when we're looking at drought, difficulties with pumping on a pump for 24 hours is just not very realistic in my sense. The county, I do give it to you, though. Your requirements do offer us a second option, and that is to pump 7,200 gallons if we're willing to put in a 1,500-gallon storage tank and have that hooked up into your well process, in which case that was an option that we seriously considered going. In fact, we bought a 3,000 water storage tank. We actually went ahead with the 14,000-gallon pump because to hook it up is going to cost us another $5,000. The difficulty that I have is the state law that says that the counties are to encourage, not so much encourage, but at least not try to make it more difficult. We have to stand to the same standards in an accessory dwelling that you have to do with new dwellings or something else. I feel that this is excessive in that this county, from my understanding, does not have a well capacity test for new houses. That's inappropriate in my feeling to put a 14,000-gallon tank water test on my pump when in fact somebody else doesn't have to do it. I don't understand the rationale for it. I don't understand the rationale for why it has to be that much water pumpage. Why can't there be something more realistic? In fact, when in our research that we did, Tuolumne County has no requirements. Amador County has no requirements, but is in the process of working on one that is much more realistic. I don't mind giving a well capacity test. In fact, when I asked what is the rationale for it, the best that I'm coming up with, and I think it was from Marita, that says we can't have somebody in the county buy a house, please correct me if I'm not trying to quote but paraphrase, that is expecting that the water capacity is there when it's not. And I totally agree with that. But when our well was put in, we were pumping 30 gallons a minute. Nobody is willing to listen. We don't live in the west end of the county where there is a water deficiency. And I'm held to all of these accountable things when...
Arthur, you have about 45 seconds.
Okay. I would like you to reevaluate this, in my opinion, unconscionable position. I also would like you to consider that now that we have a 3,000 water gallon tank in our yard, now we hear that if it was $3,600, we could get a $900 rebate on our fire. We're hooking it up for the fire department so they can use it, and if somebody had told us that we needed 36 instead of 3,000, we probably wouldn't have been so angry. I would have bought a 3,600 water gallon tank. I'm done. Thank you for your time. Please consider it.
Thank you very much.
Bye now.
Okay.
Dave, before you leave.
Gabe,
Oh.
no, Darren, not. I gave Ms. McCarthy, I went back to public comment because she had called and wanted to discuss this with the board, so I knew she was coming. Normally, we come and we go to public comment, so that's why I opened it back up. It is now closed again, and especially since I see code compliance here. Mr. Barr, could you please come forward and do item 14, 15, 16. Thank you. We will take these individually,
Yes.
okay?
I'm sorry, which was the first one on that?
14, it is Campo Seco.
Campo Seco? Okay.
Is there anything that's come up that's not in the staff report?
No, there's been no changes on that particular property.
Is there any questions? Is there anyone in the audience who represents the property owner for 4830 Buckboard Lane, Campo Seco? Then I'm going to bring it back to the board, bring it to the supervisor. Did you have any questions, comments on this?
No.
Any action? Is this your area? Oh, Campo Seco. Oh, that's where the whole place is. Trish's whole place. Yeah. Okay. Did you want to make a motion, Supervisor?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Supervisor Edson. A second.
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Wright. All in favor? Aye.
Supervisor Ponte, second.
Oh, what did I say? Oh, Supervisor Ponte. A second by Supervisor Ponte. Edson Ponte. Okay, and that was a 5-0 vote of the board to uphold the administrative citation. I'd like to move to number 15, This is in Calaveras. Are there any changes, additions that we need to know, Mr. Barr?
No, there's been no changes on this particular case.
Okay. Is there anyone here representing the property owner for 288 Duchess Drive in Calaveras? And bring it back to the board.
Yeah, has there been any personal conversation?
No, we have not had any personal conversation. They just have not responded to any correspondence at all.
Okay, thank you. I make a motion to approve.
A motion by Supervisor Ponte, second
Second.
by Supervisor Wright. All in favor to uphold the administrative citation? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Okay, on to 2977 East Highway 4 Murphy's. Has there been any changes, any additions to the staff report?
No, no additions, and we've had no correspondence with the property owner. They have not responded.
Just for clarification, there's no relationship to... It's actually my mom's name.
Nancy is your mother's
Yes,
name?
this is not.
Oh, this is your mother. Is she in the audience?
Yes, yes. Go ahead and say it. Now people are going to believe that. There's no relationship.
Levying a fine on his
Is
own
there
murder. The heartless
anyone
politician.
in the audience? Is there anyone in the
Law,
audience?
law.
No. Gentlemen,
Hey,
please.
you know I brought it up.
Representing 2977 East Highway 4 Murphy's. Okay. I'm saddened by this. I will support it if I could have a motion, please.
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor Ponte, second.
Second.
By Supervisor Spellman, all in favor? Aye. No? So goes it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Where was the public comment on all three of those items?
Oh,
Right now.
Oh,
I asked, I guess I asked.
No, you
Sorry,
didn't
thank
ask
you.
for public comment.
No, I know, I asked if there was a representative. Do you have a public comment on
a little
it?
late now, isn't it? Thank you.
No, I will bring-
Matter of fact,
Mr. Kelly, I will bring the item back. Which one?
no, all three of them back, ma'am.
I can bring all three back. What is it that you
Joe
would like?
Kelly, citizen, covered under the Brown Act.
Mr.
You
Kelly,
folks do not do your job properly. Now, here's what I'm after. In every one of these I've seen come down the pike has had public nuisance. I've seen some in the past that talk about sewer being laid out. What's the public sewer waste being laid out of a mobile home or a fifth wheel or whatever? What is the public nuisance on that? Doesn't bother me.
Mr. Kelly, what is your questions on each
I'm
of these three?
giving you the issues, ma'am. If I get to the question, I believe, do I get 15 minutes, 5 minutes for each one?
No, you don't.
Oh,
Please.
that's a shame.
You asked to have all three brought back, you can have.
Then this should be looked at as public nuisance. It should be expressed a little more as to what it is, because they lay out the issues of public nuisance and a number of other relative codes for these things. But they don't really say what they are, other than it might be they're putting a room addition in or something. Well, what is that other than they don't have a permit? And then you charge people $10,000?
If you read these, you would see what the code violations
I
are.
have read the code violations, ma'am, and but it lists public nuisance. And what is the public nuisance? With somebody building a room without a permit. What is the
Okay.
public nuisance?
Okay, thank you for your comments.
And please, next time, offer us, we the people, the ability.
Your point's well taken.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'd like to move to item 17, 18, and 19. Mr. Wright, we will take these individually. Okay, these are public hearings on 17, 18, and 19. They have to do with Williamson Act contracts. Item 17, thank you for responding. I didn't read it the way you said. Is there anything that you want to explain that is not in the staff report on this?
No, the staff report pretty much sums it up. There hasn't been any changes to that.
Okay. This is your area. Did you have any questions on this one?
I don't.
Okay. This is a public hearing, and is the property owner here, or does any member of the public wish to address this contract changes?
May I ask for a point of clarification? Are we a public hearing just for item number 17 only at this point?
No, oh, yeah. I just wanted
Just
to announce
17, okay.
that 17, 18, but I was going to take them separately.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And Mr. Kelly?
Joe Kelly. This being I believe the Williamson Act,
Correct.
is the state giving subvention funding yet?
No.
So what is the cost to the county? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not against the Williamson Act or against the agricultural people. I'm just trying to get an idea of what it's costing the county by the state's inability, although it says it has a balanced budget.
The state has assigned $1,000 to Williamson Act. That's just a holding thing. There is no subvention funds returned to the counties for Williamson Act contracts. This county has chosen to encourage Williamson Act contracts, though other counties have canceled theirs and don't do it. We have chosen to continue to support it. So we do not receive any subvention funds. And Mr. Wright can correct me, but I believe it's $1 per acre for non-prime property. And that's probably what we would get in subvention funds for these.
So then, do we have an idea of what the loss of revenue is by the state's inability to take care of its... Isn't the Williamson Act, isn't it a state law?
Yes.
Why aren't they then negating that law instead of putting the...
They're not negating it. They're just saying they are not going to give counties subvention funds, and that's been the case for probably 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4.
It was in Arnold Schwarzenegger drained the budget on that.
Right. So we do not. Yes. Thank you.
So we have no view down the road of seeing it come back with the way everything's collapsing.
We continue to lobby for those funds.
RCRC.
And both RCRC and CSAC continue to lobby for these funds,
We do
as does the Farm Bureau and everyone else involved in ag, but we do not get them, and we still support it as a county, though other counties do not.
And rightly so, and I agree, I would support it too, but I would like to know the cost of it, that it's coming down.
I'm going to just go based on what I read at 160 acres. If it is non-prime land, and that's $1 per acre, that's $160.
Okay.
So that's just rough. We don't get very much. When we did, we got $1 per acre for non-prime, $5 for prime, and we don't have a lot of prime land in Calaveras.
All you have to do is add water and you've got prime land.
That's correct.
All they've got to do is
correct.
trench a
So
little
do
bit,
you-
put some sprinklers.
Yeah, I absolutely understand. Totally understand.
Thank you, but I did notice that it did say that the county would not gain any or get any revenue on this
Correct.
in the budget, or in
And
this
we do lose property
agenda
tax.
item. Yes.
That's
So
correct.
I just wanted it to be,
So
if it could be
yes.
expressed from now on as to kind of a consideration of dollar value, so we have a little bit more understanding
that's a
too.
good point, because the subvention funds were $1 per acre. I don't know what it is in the loss of property tax, but we can look and see if that's a possibility, because there is a reduction in property tax for the landowner who has the contract.
Very good. Just so it's on the record, I do support the Williamson Act, and I do support these folks getting it because they're the ones providing us with hopefully food we eat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to make a comment, though, as I read this report and understand it, that you don't always lose property tax on the various parcels. It's subjective in regards to the parcels and I guess maybe the quality of the parcel. Because I note here it just says on 326, the property taxes paid to the county will remain the same. since all the property is under current contract?
Remain the same. It was already under Williamson Act, so we're not going to lose more. It is a rolling 10-year contract, 9-year, 10-year, and there is a reduction in property tax value in exchange for the value of maintaining lands in agricultural use.
And these are 3 new parcels, though?
These parcels were already under a Williamson Act contract.
So renewal.
Yes.
Okay.
Right,
No, they're
what
just
there
changing.
is we're disenrolling and simultaneously re-enrolling to accommodate some estate issues that occur.
I see, okay. I see the de-establish
Yeah, and
and then
that's
establish, okay,
pretty much the same for all 3 of these.
okay.
The CAO mentioned rolling contract.
Correct.
My understanding of the Williamson Act was whatever the contract date is, starts from the date the applicant says, I want out or I want to do. So there's 2 sorts of...
That's if they remove themselves from the Williamson Act. If they keep themselves in the Williamson Act, it's a rolling 10 years.
Very good, thank you. So even if they're on a 20-year contract, it's still a rolling 10-year?
Yeah, I don't think we have, I don't even think we have any 20-year contracts, the Super Williamson Acts. I think they're all 10 years unless Mr. Wright knows.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there anyone representing property owner or any other public comment on this? Okay,
Make a motion to approve.
both resolutions
All resolutions.
for number 17.
Yes.
Okay,
I'll second.
a motion by Supervisor Wright, a second by Supervisor Edson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Okay, move to number 18. It's similar. It's also 2 resolutions. Is there anything that you need to add or want to add to this, Mr. Wright? Everything, I mean, there's no changes in the staff report or anything?
No changes.
Special, okay. Is there a representative? This is a public hearing for these Williamson Act contracts, canceling, reestablishing. Any member of the public wishes to address this item? Okay. Bring it back to the board. Supervisor Ponte.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Ponte, a second by Supervisor Wright to approve the 2 resolutions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? So moved. Okay, number 19. Again, it's a public hearing. There's 2 resolutions on this one. Mr. Wright, is there anything?
No changes.
No changes? Are there any questions from the board on these? Any questions from the applicant's representative, or the public on this? Okay, bring it back to the board.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Ponte, a second by Supervisor Edson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So goes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Not to be confused with supervisor.
Nothing.
No, you're fine.
Okay, move to item 20. This is a public hearing. Mr. White came to us before telling us that about the update in the California building codes, which are adopted statewide.
That's correct.
And there are no, that these have to be enforced by the building department, whether this board approves it or not.
That's correct.
And are there any changes that the county has added to the California building codes that are just Calaveras oriented?
No, the only amendments that we're requesting is the amendment in the County Code Section 1504 in the Uniform Codes, which is an extension fee on permit extensions of $108 after, because you are allowed to have extensions on your permit. So I'll do a brief breakdown on how this works. You can bring in your plans. They can sit there for a year before you pick them up. Then you have 6 months prior to, after you pick up the plans before you do an inspection. So now we're 18 months down the road. If you're having a difficulty getting the project off the ground, you can extend your permit for no fee is what we're proposing for another 6 months. So now we're 2 years down the road. The code does allow us to do extensions based on legitimate justifications, and we have staff time that is involved in processing these, and we would like to recover some of our administrative costs as pursuant to the Health and Safety Code, Section 17951, which allows us to defray some of those costs, and we're asking for the fee of $108 to process an extension beyond the first one without a fee.
Okay, are there any questions from the board on this?
I have a question, and it just, so you've called and said your plans are ready, come pick up your permit.
That's correct.
And they can not come in for a whole year?
Yes, we used to have them come in within 6 months. They'd have, by the time we approved them, they'd come to pick them up, and we extended that some years ago to where they had a full year, that we would hold on to these plans after they were approved before they had to come in and actually take action to pull the permit and take the project out as approved.
All right, so they have a whole year before they have to physically come in and pick them up.
That's what we allow, yes.
And then they have up to 2 years to start their project without...
No, then following the one, after you get your plans, whether it's the next day that we call them or a year later, you have 6 months to acquire inspection. The code allows 180 days, and then you get an inspection. Then you have another 180 days to do another inspection, and another 180 days, and on it goes. Now, failing that, and in lieu of that, if the person, for whatever reason, hardship occurs, or financial, weather, number of things, materials, contractor disputes, whatever might come up that's a justified excuse, we will allow an extension. We're not asking to fee the first extension, so that gets us 2 years down the road if there's no inspection, if they do the 1 year before they pick up the plans, and then 180 days, and then then the first extension. Beyond that, we're asking to recoup some of the costs of processing the extensions if they continue to ask for extensions. So you have a choice. You can do an inspection, 6 months, or an extension, 6 months.
Okay.
So what's involved in the cost?
Well, what we have all this information in Permits Plus, so we have to retrieve the we have to notify them on how to fill out the form. They fill out the form. We kind of walk them through the process, get into Permits Plus, look at the status, look at the project, look at everything involved. We take the forms, we compare it to the permits, and match up that these are the owners, and this is who's requesting the extension. We go through all the process of that, then we review that. We end up either denying or approving the extension, goes back into the Permits Plus system, and we notify them to the status of that extension.
Other questions?
We have not charged for that in the past, and we have a considerable number of extensions because they're free.
Well, we've had probably in the past year because of, like you said, the climate, economic climate that's been out there and other things.
Yes, for the last 3 years we've been rather generous with this condition, but it it takes up a lot of our time, and if they don't do an inspection and want an extension, like I said, they can get the first one without a fee is what we're proposing, and we'd like to recover some of the costs involved in processing these. So that's the amendment change in the county code.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. Does any member of the public have anything they'd like to address on this item?
Joe Kelly, I hope this is going to, I'm not necessarily positive on the side of putting another fee on for an extension. I don't like that idea. But in the reading, this thing talked about also within the codes, the CBC, the CPC, the CMC are going to be changing. These are building, mechanical, and
Correct.
okay, plumbing. I have concerns over just the codes themselves. We adopt international codes. I don't know why. Because I'm finding that here in Calaveras County, I would have to ask you for hopefully your insight on this, Ms. Callaway, where you live. Do you have a system drain down on your water system? Because I think it should be qualified throughout this county that anywhere that is snowed in the past, that it is mandatory or in the system of planning or construction of these to have that drain down. Also, I would like to see that, because we have these best and brightest people making all these rules up in Sacramento for us to all abide by. But you know what? There isn't a damn one of them that can tell me why air ducts in a house, in an attic space, pump air without a mechanical push from a pump. Nobody. And I've had my house air tested. I've had my house smoked. I've had everything done possible. At least once, twice, 3 times. Nobody can tell me why. But yet we have all these regulators pushing this stuff down on us as to why, or as to do without reasons why, and being able to understand what the whole system is. One thing I'm very concerned about, I talked to Jeff the other day, bathroom vents. He made comment that in 2014, I believe it is, bathroom fans are coming back in. Even if you have a window in the bathroom, they're going to be required. We need to stop this nonsense. Either make it and keep it or forget it. But the other thing is, when they put a bathroom vent in and they allow it, they don't necessarily make it go through the roof to vent out, but they allow it to go to a gable vent. That on this, rather than having an open line there for when the wind comes through that gable vent to blow into that 4-inch pipe, come down and blow into that bathroom, cold air is nonsense. So there isn't, to my knowledge, on that particular thing, it is to when it's vented to the outside to have a damper, but not when it's up to a gable vent to have a damper. And believe me, it does make a big bunch of difference. So these are the kinds of things. If I were you folks sitting there, if I was voting on UBC, the building and those codes, I wouldn't be voting for them. This thing is up to you if you want to give him the extension. There's a lot of reasons why people take their time to get things done. And by the way, when they pay their fee, they're paying for those inspections. And if they haven't done the inspections, they should be given credit for those inspections against any fee. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I know the Building Officials Association argued with Sacramento frequently on some of the code requirements. This is done every 3 years. And as I said earlier, it applies to every single city and county in the state of California. It's not just for Calaveras. Not that we don't agree with some of the things you say, which on occasion I do. The building department is required to enforce this, all building departments. Are there any other public comments? This is a public hearing. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. I asked for a motion to approve this and waive reading.
I make the motion.
Motion by Supervisor Spellman, second. Okay, none of you want to do it, then I will do it. I will make the second on this. And as I said, even if you don't approve the changes to the California building codes, the department is mandated to enforce them. And if you don't, I guess I would ask you to say what it is about the code you don't want. And so at least Mr. White knows and he can report back. So is there any comments from the board on that item?
My only comment is I know that we have to adopt the codes that are sent to us from California, but I don't like adding additional fees unless I get a chance to study them, and that's why I would be willing.
So, Jeff, let me see. Can we separate it out and all subsequent shall be granted a fee of $108. Jeff, when the question is, that's a good point, if we don't do it, does the general fund pay for staff's time for
That would be our next, then we're into that sort of a scenario.
Through the chair, if the individual does not pay, then the general fund does pay, and so the rest of the county is subsidizing this individual's project.
And that's what's happening now.
That is what's happening.
What I got to say about that is I'd have to look at it to see if there is in fact additional costs. Because if you're in my mind, if you have a person that has pulled a permit and there's processes behind that, if they don't get to a process, then you're not expending any extra money on that process. And then when it comes time to do it, that's when you expend that.
That's not what he said.
No, our weighted rate for our department is $111 an hour and 76 cents. If we spend 96% of 1 hour to do this, that shakes out to $108. So this is something that we've looked at in the what it takes for us to provide this type of service has its time spent and material spent.
What is it that you're doing to allow for the extension?
Well, again, what we do is we go into the Permits Plus, we get the information, we talk to the person who wants the extension, we kind of guide them through the process, let them know what it takes to do this, phone time. Then we have different conversations, depends on who's talking to them, what their condition is. We go back into Permits Plus, we go get the file, we get the...
What if we...
so there's a lot of legwork, a lot of phone work, a lot of...
So what if we just extended it out further, instead of having it be every 180 days or every 6 months, whatever. What if we just said, you have 3 years to do it? How would that work?
Well, that's contrary to what the code language is, which is the 180-day process of doing something active to the actual permit. So the code gives us the 180-day increments.
But is there any flexibility there in the code, or is that just...
Well, no, that's how it's been written for years, that there is action, that you have 180 days between the time you get the permit to do an inspection. The way to opt out of this, if it was me, I would say, well, I'll get an inspection and not pay the fee and get a legitimate inspection, and 6 months is a considerable length of time to accomplish something on the project. So it's not like you have to come in and do an extension if you're able to work on scheduling an inspection. The other problem that comes into effect is if we do nothing on a project, then the codes change. So then if they don't do anything and their permit actually expires because they've done nothing at all, conceivably, if they've done absolutely nothing, then they have to resubmit to the next code.
And all these timelines are in California code?
That's correct. The international code is the body of the code globally, and there's actual hearings that take place, and people who want to voice their opinion on how these codes are going to be written have the opportunity to go to code hearings. If you want to go to Florida, last time that was where it was. So we're influenced by the global condition. So once the international codes are adopted, and in this particular time it was in the 2013 codes, which take effect through the California amendments. California takes the codes, writes their own amendments through the Building Standards Commission to approve the California version of the codes. There's probably only 2 or 3 states that actually do it that way. The rest of them just receive the international code for what it is. If you compare the language in the international code and the California amendments, they're very similar. So there's not a lot of rewrites there.
My thing is I'm supportive of approving the code. Tying the fee structure into it is bothersome to me because, like everything else, I'd like to be able to see the bigger picture of fees and the establishment of the fees, the reasoning behind that, justification, etc. And so taking this one item and approving a fee for this particular item, for me, is bothersome not to see the bigger picture of fees in the building department. And could very well be justified, that sort of thing, but it's just one fee, part of a bigger fee structure in the building department. So I have no problem with the, approving the California Building Code. I think that's pretty important, but the fee structure is bothersome to me.
So, Mr. White, if we took the section that said the first approved on page 3, number, sort of like at 21, 22, the first approved 180 days shall be granted without a fee. All subsequent extensions shall be granted for a fee of $108 for each blah, blah, blah. For the purpose, work shall be considered abandoned. And just take that out. Could we do that, Council?
The government code says that if you make any substantive provisions to the ordinance, it has to come back again. I would not consider that a substantive amendment to it, since it's only one sentence and it has nothing to do with the actual codes themselves. So you can make a motion to do that and go ahead and adopt that ordinance today.
Okay. Mr. Spellman, did you want to modify your motion to include that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
And the reasoning for that is that, it's been my experience that the terminology that's been used by our staff, who are the professionals that we've hired to make sure that we maintain a standard within our county that's equal to what we're expected to fulfill through the state, and that is that we need to have a cost recovery. And so the building department here has already concluded or has given, the go-ahead or green light, to say, let's give them the first one on us, just to establish what needs to be done. And at that point, they've got 180 days. I mean, if they're giving them a freebie out of the gates, and they're giving them 180 days, 6 months, to come up with something. And here's the second issue. As one of the supervisors over here brought up, and I can't remember, excuse me for forgetting which one of you brought it up, that yes, the building department, unlike many of the other departments, is funded by permits that they get for doing work, unlike other departments that are just general fund, budgeted. So if they're going out and doing additional work, they do bill back to the general fund. So every time they leave their office and go somewhere, and 1 hour is minimum. I mean, it takes a half hour just to drive to Valley Springs and back. So you got an hour right there without even saying one word. Just showing up and saying hello, you got an hour. And so that has to be paid from somewhere. And so if that's coming from the general fund, what our CAO and county council are telling us, and staff is telling us, is that we are subsidizing people that can't get their crap together in 6 months.
I don't think there's that exactly. May have paraphrased.
So, I do not amend my original motion.
Okay,
I think
I'll
that people
it.
should be professional, and that they should use the 6 months and the freebie out of the gate that the county allows them to get their stuff together. And if they can't get it together, then maybe they ought to rethink their strategy. Because we can't afford to be giving $108 a pop to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to do something, and they haven't got it got their plans
Okay, got it.
in place.
Thanks,
We
Darren.
don't have the money to afford to be like that.
Thanks, Darren. I do appreciate those comments, and I think for myself, it gets back to with the increase of the road fees that we declined the last time around, last month. Is that I need to, like Debbie, I'd like to see this as a bigger picture. and have more information on the overall fee structure for not only this department, but the entire county. So I think this piecemealing, as we've discussed before, is not the correct approach right now. And so I'll make the proposal that we accept the building codes without the fee increases. That's my motion.
I made a motion prior to
He
that.
made a
okay.
made a motion.
All right. And we'll second by you.
And I took the position of seconding it, which is sort of out of the norm. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It fails on a, pardon?
We can have a roll count?
Well, I was just going to call out the
That's
vote.
okay.
It fails on a 2 by Spellman Calloway, and the 3 votes for no were Ponte, Wright, and Edson.
So I'd like to make a motion to accept the building codes without the fee increase.
Then taking out that one
Yeah,
sentence.
taking out the,
And just bring it back.
and then bring back the
bring
fee
back
increase.
Well, what you want is
discussion.
all the fees.
Yeah,
We used,
A fee
just-
schedule discussion.
we used to
Beginning
do
of-
that. We used to bring all the fees at one time.
I have been encouraging departments to bring forward their fee increases. I will tell you that they're reticent to do so because but I have been encouraging them to do so and will continue to do so.
And to respond to that, we did used to do that. However, there are different statutory requirements. In particular, you'll notice the notice on this one references a section of the Mitigation Fee Act that requires a specific type of notice. So it makes it more difficult to bring them as a group because there are different noticing requirements for different fees.
Yes, that's something that I wasn't aware of before now, so that's good information.
So,
I'll second the
would you like
motion.
to entertain the original motion? then?
No,
The original information?
I'm continuing, but Debbie seconded it.
Okay, a motion by Supervisor Wright to amend the ordinance, removing that sentence that's on page 3, number 21 to 24.
I'll second this motion.
Motion, but it was
But I
a second
appreciate
by
it.
Supervisor Ponte. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you. Okay. We're going to go to item 21. I do have to say I have a problem with doing it because I've told people we would be doing it at 2 o'clock, those people who are interested, since I've already told them, but we have, since we have time, and that seems to be the direction that's recommended, we'll go to item 21. It's an update. I want credit for going through the agenda quickly.
I think that's a unified board,
Oh, no,
It's all of us together working as a team.
Got it.
We may need to-
Right. Okay.
We need a 5-minute break
We'd
to
like
get
to have
set
a
up.
5-minute recess.
You do deserve credit for that.
Yeah. Reconvene the meeting, please. We're going to have an update on Amador Tuolumne Community Action Agency, Central Sierra Connect project, and broadband issues in general. Mr. Stillman, would you like to take the lead, please?
Thank you. And you introduced it. You read the first letter, or the first sentence.
Yeah, well, code
So
says
awesome.
that I'm supposed to do it because Brown Act says it, or somebody like Janice Elliott. So I have to do it.
So in September of 2011, the board adopted a resolution supporting AFCO's continuing grant for the Central Sierra Connect project. That grant was awarded, and Mr. Darrell Slocum is here to give you an update on the project.
Thank you very much, Howard. I appreciate that. Madam Chair, board members, staff, it's a pleasure to speak to you today. And as Howard mentioned, my intent is to provide an overview of the project and some background information, and then open a dialogue. That's my intent, is to imbibe you with enthusiasm about the prospects of expanding our broadband horizons. Before I do that, let me provide a little bit of background. Go ahead, Xander. My son Xander here is assisting. So, a little bit about the project, which is called Central Sierra Connect. It is an ATCA program. It is a grant-funded program. And in essence, our charter is to bridge the digital divide. And we do that through a variety of mechanisms, including being a facilitator of broadband infrastructure programs. We ourselves, meaning Central Sierra Connect, we're not in the broadband business. We don't build out networks. I wasn't out pulling fiber earlier this morning or anything like that. We facilitate the process. But in addition to that, we also have adoption programs. So loosely, we talk about bringing broadband to the people and people to broadband. Surprisingly, our area has a significant percentage of the population that are still not computer literate. That's for a variety of reasons, including senior citizens. But even more surprising are people who've moved up here and they've retired from a profession where they did not use a computer in their day-to-day life. And there can be an aversion to that. And we have programs, including training programs, to help get them on board and using a computer. So as I mentioned, we are a grant-funded program. We're funded by the CETF, which is the California Emerging Technology Fund. And just for background and history, that fund was originally formed back when Verizon and MCI merged and AT&T and SBC merged. As a requirement of those mergers, they had to put $60 million forward to facilitate competition. And our program was born from that. It's a 3-year fund. We're about a year and a half in right now. And we've made some progress, but we have a lot of work left to do. And our consortium, our collaboration is the 5-county area that we lovingly refer to as the Motherlode region. What we're trying to do, as I mentioned, is we are big believers in broadband connectivity and that the internet can be an avenue for economic prosperity and facilitates, in essence, all areas of our life now. And so it's gone from being a luxury to what we believe to be an absolute necessity. So I want to talk a little bit about what broadband is. There are technical definitions of broadband. And for the sake of our discussion today, I don't want to go into that. What I'd rather have you thinking in terms of is that last bullet item there. We refer to broadband as the way people commonly use the internet. And the reason I like to use that definition is because that's a moving scale. It wasn't too long ago where streaming video and watching movies online, etc., was something that we didn't really consider doing. Now that's a regular occurrence for people who have that ability because they have a strong enough broadband connection or they long for it. They'd like to have that kind of broadband connection, and that's kind of one of the things that we're going to talk about. Again, for clarification and for the sake of today's discussion, when I'm talking about broadband, unless I say so specifically, I'm talking about what we call terrestrial forms of broadband connectivity, meaning I'm not talking about cellular. And I'll go into some detail later as to why. So terrestrial, we're talking about a connection to the home, ideally a fiber connection or another form of connectivity, including a WISP or a wireless internet service provider, someone who's taking signal into a tower and then transmitting it to another area. That can be classified as broadband by the definition we're using, but cellular is in a different category.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Does broadband, the definition of broadband include DSL?
Yes. If the DSL is of adequate bandwidth to allow people to use the internet the way they want to use the internet. And I know that's a little vague, but I'm going to talk more about that as we move forward. So I mentioned the pervasiveness of broadband connectivity, and I like this quote from Mr. Larry Cope, who I think most of you know. It's an absolute necessity in many aspects of our life, including economic development. But one thing I wanted to point out when showing this quote is we commonly think of it in terms of recruiting new companies and new businesses to come to our area. But the reality is we've got to support the existing businesses that we have now. And that's becoming increasingly difficult as our infrastructure situation changes. And I'm going to talk more about that. Next slide, please. So we talk about the current situation in our area, and unfortunately, when we talk about rural broadband connectivity issues, we're kind of living and breathing it right here, because as you can see from this slide, we have low broadband access as a percentage. And I want to clarify that. I don't like to use absolutes, and it bothers me when other people do. So you'll hear, and I'm sure you hear from your constituents, there's no broadband coverage. And it used to drive me crazy when I was in the cell phone business when they'd say there's no cell phone coverage, because it's not accurate. There may not be coverage where you want, or there may not be coverage where you need it, but there are pockets of our area that have fairly adequate broadband coverage today. What we're talking about are those pockets of areas, and there are a significant amount of them, that are lacking that right now. In that category, we rank very low compared to other counties in California. So I'd like to create a visual picture for you here. When you talk about broadband delivery, it can get very technical, and I'm sure Howard could wow us with some of the technical aspects of broadband delivery. But remember this visual as we pull up the next slide, and we talk about thinking about the delivery of broadband via a pipeline. And so part of what we're up against is our pipeline big enough? Does it go to the right places? And what I mean by that is we have, I know you've heard from people that say, Comcast goes right by my street, but I can't get connectivity. Well, that's where that pipeline comes in, because just because the pipeline is going down your street doesn't mean it provides you a connection point. And then lastly, do we need more pipelines? We absolutely do. That's a loaded question. One of the assets we have in our arsenal is a project that's currently underway. It's funded by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. It's the CVIN VAST project. This is a huge benefit to our area. We're already seeing benefit to it, even though the project is not complete in the Motherlode region. But as you can see, in addition, there was a total of 18 counties involved with the award, and 5 of them are the Motherlode counties. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the CVIN project is doing already and will continue to do for our area. The charter of CVIN is that it's specifically designed to provide broadband infrastructure to what are classified as anchor tenants. In Calaveras County, I believe that's the Office of Education in Angels Camp, the library here on Mountain Ranch Road, and the government center. That's what we classify that as a middle mile provider, meaning that there are many more residents and businesses that could potentially be connected via this project, but it requires more investment, more infrastructure build out in order to do that. Having said that, if we didn't have something like the CVIN project being completed right now, I'd be here talking to you about how we could get that done. So it does several things for our area, including providing some of that redundancy, that extra pipeline that we talked about. Calaveras Telephone down at Copperopolis is already connected to the CVIN project, and they have a backhaul going to Los Angeles, and it's a boon for them and what they're trying to do. They already have fiber to the homes on about 800 houses down in the Copperopolis area. That's the ideal scenario. I wish I could tell you today that we'll soon be bringing that to all residences in Calaveras County, but that is kind of the textbook example of where we would like to be. Yes, sir.
RFME brought terabyte capability to the town of Milton. They didn't ask anybody.
Right.
Milton's got terabytes? Milton has terabytes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it qualified as a disadvantaged unincorporated community. There is an AT&T cell tower there, some other stuff. So they brought terabyte to Milton. Now, Milton is only about 5 miles, give or take, maybe only 4 or 5 miles from Rancho Calaveras, which you do have an elementary school there. You have a fire station. You have a clubhouse, which hopefully will include a public library at one point. You also have just over 5,000 people, which qualifies as the only place in Calaveras County that qualifies as the state definition of a small urban area. greater than 5,000, less than 50,000. I can tell you that I'm one of the lucky ones who live in Rancho Calaveras to have CalTel as my provider, and I have DSL. The other people who have AT&T aren't so lucky. They don't even have DSL. The only thing that they have at their availability is HughesNet, Dish, or something like that. Or maybe if they're lucky, a line of sight from a WISP. But I'm hoping that perhaps at the end of this conversation, I might be able to get your card and that you could perhaps give me some positive hope that the CVIN project or some funds from that could be used to extend that terabyte pipe 5 miles into Rancho Calaveras. That's a huge segment of the county's population, over 5,000 people in one spot.
Kind of a classic example of the haves and have-nots. And unfortunately, I'm going to squelch your dreams right now by telling you that the CVIN money is spent. So that what you just described isn't possible as an extension of the CVIN project. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't other possibilities that could surface. So here's an overview of the CVI build-out in total. And I think I just forwarded an update to Howard that I think he may have shared with some of you, that the completion of the project right now is hung up by some work over in Tuolumne County and some negotiation that's taking place with Caltrans. But we're hopeful that that's going to be complete by early next year.
Okay, wait, hold on a second. That slide here.
I'm happy to provide this presentation to you, by the way. So
this is where it curves and goes through Copperopolis, and then up into Tuolumne County, coming to loop. But right here at this little spot right there where it angles over, right around there, that's where they did it. I know, it's like hard, it's like this little dot. Too much coffee or something, I don't know.
No, what did you visit down in Valley Springs before you?
There's a little dot, forgotten knowledge, I forgot what it was.
Okay.
But that's where the little terabyte spur is right there.
Okay.
They got extra funding just to lay some cables, a little community,
So as mentioned, the CVIN project is a huge asset for our area. Now what we need is for our existing service providers to come in and tap into that infrastructure that's being installed through CVIN. And that's where the H-Star Technologies and Ron Mobley's company and the other internet service providers have the ability to provide service to those that are currently unserved or underserved. I'd like to give you a little bit more definition of what those categories are. I think Supervisor Spellman mentioned HughesNet. Currently, satellite providers are not considered to be fully served providers, meaning you're not able to use the internet the way you want to use the internet if you have a satellite provider. That's good for our area from the standpoint of, as many of you know, there are entire neighborhoods that are currently relying totally on satellite coverage, which is it's subpar. You can't. There's latency issues and there are data caps, and it prohibits you from being able to use the internet the way you want to. So what we are hoping to facilitate as Central Sierra Connect is to make our local providers, like the ones that I've mentioned, and by the way, we don't favor any one internet service provider over another. We support them all equally. But we want to make them aware of any and all grant monies that are available, and then help them through the process, encourage them to apply for the grant monies so that they can tap into the CVIN infrastructure and build out connectivities to some of the areas that are currently lacking right now. Going back to my comments about cellular coverage, I'm very sensitive to that because I've been attending a lot of the hearings up in Sacramento. As many of you know, there was a bill just passed, SB 740, which added another $90 million of funding to the broadband infrastructure build-out programs. While those were being contested before the hearings, the large telcos, specifically Verizon, would go before the hearing and question the hearing committee members, asking them, why are you even considering any more infrastructure build-out when we've got it all covered? The problem with that is we know it's not covered in our area, number one, that cellular is spotty at best. Number two, it's prohibitively expensive. We have a lot of low-income residents who can't afford to pay the kind of rates that the large cellular providers charge. And lastly, and equally significant, are the data caps that come with it. You know, you even if you're fortunate enough to live in an area where you can rely on a cellular data connection at your home, you're very limited as to how much you can use. Those are the reasons why I don't consider that to be a long-term solution for our particular area. Does it add benefit? Absolutely. I love mobile connectivity. I love being mobile. I love the prospects of building out our area and having more cellular signal available, so to allow people to move around and stay connected when they're working. And of course, the biggie, which is the way that supports our health and our safety providers, those that are providing services. But what I don't want to see happening is for the cell phone companies to be restricting our availability to infrastructure because they believe they already have it covered. In fact, what Verizon likes to talk about in their marketing program is that they have 98% of the U.S. population covered, which leads to our new cry, we are the 2%, right? Because we are the ones that are uncovered. Having said that, there is an opportunity through improved cellular networks to have better bandwidth capabilities in our area, and that would be of benefit to our area. Currently, our networks are limited to 3G speeds, and if a provider was to build out to 4G, that would be beneficial to our area. But again, we don't see that as a residential solution.
So when it pops up 4G on your, that's just a lie.
Yeah. So if you probably have an AT&T device, and so AT&T has different forms of 4G. What you'll notice is it says 4G when you're here, and then when you go down to the city, it'll say 4G LTE, and that's the actual true 4G signal. Yeah.
Well, nice sales thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So when I was with the cell phone company, we said our competitor had turned on 4G, and it was a switch in the marketing department. That's where they turned it on. So.
We do have a lot of, even in like Valley Springs, a lot of dead areas in Valley Springs, in Burson. Right at the grocery store.
All over the county. I mean,
Burson.
So
these parts, flat areas.
Right. So in the middle of nowhere. So I had the pleasure. I had not the pleasure. I had to burst Supervisor Spellman's balloon, and now I will burst yours because I don't think we're going to see a significant amount of cellular build out. And what I mean by that is additional cell sites providing coverage beyond what we have available right now. And that's strictly from an ROI standpoint for those companies.
You kind of already knew that.
Yeah. So those areas that we have are going to continue to be poor covered area. Now one light at the end of the tunnel that I'd like to share with you, that there's a good news and there's a bad news, but one of the significance of cellular is that the ongoing movement to smartphones, right? People moving away from a traditional handset to a smartphone device. Part of that erodes our bandwidth because the way you manage a cellular data plan now is defaulting to Wi-Fi whenever possible. Does everybody get that? Right? You want to limit how much data you consume on your cellular network. Most of the companies have now introduced shared data plans so that you can do your budgeting by getting a smaller plan, which means you need to use less data. One of the ways you do that is by moving to Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi on the home is becoming problematic from the standpoint of our homes have more and more devices dividing up that signal now. That's going to lead to an increase in our bandwidth requirement. And that ties into what I was talking about when I mentioned the way our internet usage is evolving. Because even those areas that I mentioned earlier that have adequate coverage now, meaning adequate bandwidth, the more devices that come on board, the more that stream gets split, the larger that pipeline needs to be. So we need to be fighting and working hard to find more solutions, not just for those uncovered or underserved areas that we have, but to increase the pipeline to the served areas and to continue pursuing sources of redundancy. There's a video that I typically show during my presentations that I didn't think we had time for today, but it's a very slick video that's produced by Corning Glass. And as you might imagine, it showcases their products. But it's called A Day in Glass. And basically what it does is it shows a futuristic household, futuristic meaning in the not too distant future. But in essence, they get up and literally the walls of their homes are made of glass and they have internet connectivity on the walls and the tabletops in their kitchen. And it just shows them going around the house, checking their schedule, looking at what they have planned for the day, watching videos, etc. on the substrates of their home. And so the reason I show the video is because it's very slick, well produced. It gets a lot of oohs and ahs. And I turn it off and then I say, I comment on how interesting the video was and how concerned I am that all I see is bandwidth hogs. I see appliances using bandwidth and laptops and tablets and smartphones, etc., lions and tigers and bears. So that complicates our problem because, again, our adoption rate, which typically lags behind, often lags behind the larger areas, whatever the trend is in moving towards smartphones in the big city, we're a little behind that, but people are still going there. We still have people every day that are walking into our retail stores and upgrading to smartphones, which means they're using more data, which means our pipeline needs to increase. So that's kind of an overview of where we are and where we need to get to. The promising part for me is that for those of you who have been following this, there's been talk about providing broadband in rural areas for some time, right? I mean, it's one of the things President Obama talked about in 2008 when he was talking about the ERA funding, right? Connecting the rural areas. It hasn't really happened. I mean, we have CVIN, but we still have a lot of voids that exist in our rural areas. My belief is the reason that's happening is that as long as there were urban areas without connectivity, that's where the focus could be, right? Because we're humans. We take the path of least resistance. That's what we do. As those voids are being filled and those communities are being connected, we start to become more to the forefront, but by necessity, because there's nobody left. We're getting closer to that point where the rural issue is going to have to be addressed. And that's why I'm grateful for that extra funding being added via SB 740, because it doesn't guarantee that our area is going to get any of that funding, but we absolutely can't get it if there's none available. On the last round of submissions on February 1st, earlier this year, the number of requests for funding from the other consortium, we are one of 14 around the state, those submissions exceeded the total dollar amount that was left in the fund. Meaning if they would have awarded all of those, the money would be gone, at least from that particular pool of money. What's happened now is that several of them were thrown out because of protests from the big guys that I was talking about earlier, because they are vetting every proposal, because they are doing everything they can to ensure that no monies are going towards providing services in areas that are already covered. So that reduced the number of eligible submissions, and then that money got added back in. So what I anticipate is going to happen, and I say anticipate because all of the awards have not been made yet, that once there is going to be a relatively smaller, a much smaller pool of money that's available. Then there will be another chance to submit proposals. And the good news is, I think the CPUC, which is the one that reviews the proposals and makes the determinations, I believe they're going to be much more open to smaller proposals. In the past, they were very much interested in big build-outs that were going to cover a lot of area and get to a lot of people. That didn't serve us very well because we don't have any neighborhoods that are in that category. I anticipate that they're going to be much more open and receptive to smaller proposals where neighborhoods of 20, 30, 40 homes are served. So that's what we're going to be pushing and promoting and encouraging our local providers to participate in. That's a lot of information. I hope on some level I've educated you and gotten you excited. What I would like to have happen is the same thing that happened to Supervisor Callaway, who was able to go up to Sacramento and attend a roundtable, which I'm sure you've told everyone about. But to become imbibed with, well, number one, to become educated about the void that we have and the need to fill that void, even though it's a daunting task, and then to go to work on what we can do to improve our lot. And that's what we're here to help with. So having said that, here's our contact information. We have a newsletter that we put out. Part of what we're trying to do is, believe it or not, we're trying to obtain information. It's not easy to determine the precise areas of need. We know of some specific neighborhoods, but not all of them. Part of that is there are some errors with the mapping programs. The errors in the mapping programs are difficult to get solved because there's no incentive for the big guys to solve them. Again, their whole marketing plan is to tout what percentage of the population they have covered. So it's hard to get them to reduce that by going in and saying, oh, this map shows that your neighborhood is covered, we're going to fix that. It's much more difficult than it needs to be. So what we're trying to do is take back actual boots on the ground information to show the specific areas that are underserved and unserved right now. Questions?
Yeah. Thank you for that presentation. I can give you specific examples from my district if you'd like them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I will give each of you a card, and I encourage you to contact me with any questions or any information that you have.
So is it out of your scope to deal with because for me it's a combination, of both the cell service in my district especially, is dismal. There's a couple corridors where there's coverage, and the rest of it's, there's no coverage except for the, top of the water tower.
Right.
That type
Right.
of thing. So is that beyond your scope? Is to address that at all?
To work with the cellular providers to try to get them to expand coverage?
Yeah.
No, that's not a provision of our award. However, I would like to tell you that there are changes in technology. I think on one of the slides we talked about voice over IP, which is basically making a call over the internet.
Yeah.
I've been testing and utilize a new cell phone that's a hybrid device. It's both Wi-Fi and cellular. And so when you're at your home, or if you have an adequate Wi-Fi connection, you can actually make a call over Wi-Fi.
Oh, cool.
Now that's not very helpful when you're out on the roads. I understand that. But for a lot of people, perhaps people in your area, that they don't have a cellular coverage at their house, with this device, you could make and receive calls over Wi-Fi, and then you could use your cellular as you move around. Now, the negative to it is, unfortunately, this particular company, their partner on the cellular side is Sprint, and we don't have a lot of Sprint sites in our area. Sprint partners with Golden State, so you can use the device on the Golden State network, but it doesn't work as well as it does in the big city or someplace where you have Sprint. But that technology of Wi-Fi and making calls over Wi-Fi, that's going to become more and more prominent as we move forward.
And then specifically I have a small rural subdivision called Golden Hills, and they have Comcast that's literally across the street from their subdivision.
Yeah.
And so they'd really love to have high-speed internet or something. How do we get the pipeline, from where it is over the hill, basically, from where their Golden Hills is, or Comcast, in order to connect with that? Is that something you can work with us on?
Absolutely. I've had extensive conversations with Comcast, and they won't come right out and say that they're not going to do any additional.
Well, that's what they tell the residents.
Right.
Yeah.
That they're not going to.
They do, yeah.
Right. Honestly, I think I prefer seeking solutions from our local providers.
Yeah, I don't
think
care
long-term
who
that's going to be
provides,
better.
just somebody,
So again, I'll give you my card and you can contact me.
And the other idea I had, just from a board perspective, is I'd like to put together an ad hoc committee to work on, forming up a Calaveras specific roundtable, with you and a couple of members of the board to really make this happen. If anybody else would like to do that,
I'd love to.
And I don't know, maybe.
Certainly happy to do with that. That's a great idea. one of the things that I shared with Supervisor Callaway recently is that Santa Cruz, one of the supervisors there is a forward-thinking, tech-savvy individual who is aware of I think they said they have 18,000 people that leave Santa Cruz every day and commute to the Silicon Valley. He wants to retain those individuals, and so what he's attempting to do is to create a broadband infrastructure, a welcoming broadband infrastructure in Santa Cruz County to remove barriers and obstacles that hinder a company's ability to invest in broadband infrastructure. We're following that closely. What we hope to do is to learn from that and bring it forward and attempt to make some of the same kind of changes in our region to do the same thing, to make it easier for people to make the investment.
Great.
Sir?
One comment and then one question.
Okay.
Comment was you tried to educate us a little bit on the phone, VoIP capabilities when you have wireless. I did notice a few months ago that when sending text messages at home, where I have Wi-Fi or at a Wi-Fi hotspot, such as a coffee shop or something like that, it comes up as an iMessage instead of a text message on my iPhone, which utilizes the Wi-Fi for the text instead of cellular. So I don't know how many phones, if it's just iPhones that do that or if other people's phones utilize that, but that is an example of similar to what you were talking about. It's not voice but text over Wi-Fi when Wi-Fi is present.
That's a great example, and iMessaging is a product of the iOS operating system. However, there are other text messaging apps that work over other platforms. So,
and then the comment or question was, the question following up was, I'm very interested in these things, and I've talked with different people about, why can Metro PCS provide, unlimited access for people down in the valley for $30 a month? Why? How do they do it? And the result was kind of a rabbit hole, chase. But what it came down to is that apparently they're co-opting telephone poles and power poles, not cell towers, just like regular telephone poles in metro areas. And so up here, there's very little buried cable. I mean, most of all our stuff is overhead, for telephone especially. So would there be an opportunity for some progressive thinking and funding for a smaller local remedy, if you will, to be able to use that type of scenario like Metro PCS does, where you could co-opt telephone poles and power poles in some of the what would be considered sparsely populated to metro area people, but like Supervisor Edson was talking about down the Valley Springs area, where it's fairly rural in relation to the rest of the state. However, it is fairly flat, and if you co-opted some of those poles and things like that, I think you could have a pretty good grid set up for extending cellular service and coverage to a better extent. I don't know. I just threw that out there. See what your thoughts are on that, and if that's something that would be a possibility.
Well, I believe the idea of utilizing existing infrastructure is absolutely towards the top of the list of what I'm advocating, but not for cellular. And unfortunately, cellular is complicated from the standpoint of licensing and the availability of bands. However, Wi-Fi, what you just described, is a perfect opportunity for building out Wi-Fi. Which again, I'm a big advocate of Wi-Fi. I think it's the future, in my opinion.
So you could just just building that thought. So you could take from the main pipeline that we invested in, and you could pull off of that and hop on telephone poles across the valleys and then be able to provide service to the people along the way.
That's what Metro PCS does.
Well, what I was getting ready to say is I don't think Wi-Fi is a solution to our residential problem. However, it certainly aids our residents, meaning our people that are out and about. And from a tourism standpoint, it's one of the things that absolutely is terrific for tourism.
Especially on the corridors.
So it would work for visitors, but not.
Well, it would work for residents too, but it's not going to solve their home problem. I mean, if you
they would run along the corridors like 26.
So you can pick up a text service better.
Right. So if you have one of those Wi-Fi, a hybrid hybrid phone service where you can make calls over Wi-Fi. You just need an adequate Wi-Fi connection, and same with the text messaging program too. It's the thing that other municipalities and other entities have tried to tackle. There is a cost associated with providing Wi-Fi, and the struggle has been to find a model that pays for it. Now, what Volcano has done over in Amador County and in parts of Calaveras County is they have built out some Wi-Fi hotspots that they make available for free to their residential subscribers, and then they make them available to anyone who will pay either a daily or a monthly subscription. That's working out very well for them. In fact, they've been doing that for years, and if you look, that's the big guys are copying that now. One of the things that Comcast and Time Warner and Cox Cable are doing is building out Wi-Fi networks. And the reason they do it is to reduce churn from their subscribers. Because the subscribers who have their service at home, who can now go into the city and get Wi-Fi for free, they don't want to lose that benefit. That can be part of our solution. Again, I'm a big proponent of Wi-Fi. I just don't think that in and by itself is going to be our solution.
Just a question. Who serves on the steering committee?
Well, we would love to have you on the steering committee. The steering committee is made up of a combination of, we have a couple of supervisors from other counties on the committee, IT people. Howard's on the committee, as is Daniel Richardson from Tuolumne County. Private business owners and individuals, and then interested community supporters. I mean, what we want are people that are interested in the cause and willing to help us. That's what we're looking for.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that.
Okay.
So this is not the be-all and end-all. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm available to you as a resource. Would love to come back. I love the idea about a committee, etc. Just let me know what you need.
Sir.
Yes.
We have a fairly liberal tower location policy in the county. So, I mean, we've had that covered, I mean, thanks to Howard and the planning department. So I'm assuming we're okay on that. And then when I talked to to Tim.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he was really excited about CVIN and about how it could expand. And we talked about the counties, because I'm looking at what can the county do, because we don't have the general fund resources to partner in a lot of things where we have to ante up funds. Yet the partnerships are important to help grow our community or help it prosper. So I guess I'm looking at what kind of partnerships can we do, and maybe Howard can answer some. What could we do to expand Wi-Fi from our libraries to a bigger circle of people that could utilize that Wi-Fi? Our libraries couldn't submit a grant because we don't censor on our computers, but that's almost become obsolete because people come into into the libraries and they can Wi-Fi. So even though our computers are out in the public arena, so if anybody's doing X-rated stuff, we can 86 them, but they can sit and do it on their laptop or whatever, this machine. So what kinds of things can we do to expand that within Calaveras? I mean,
Excellent question. Excellent. So you're absolutely on the right track. So your library is one of the locations that CVIN is going to build out to. So that's going to be a hardwired connection to improve the bandwidth going into the library. But now you could take that signal, someone could take that signal, when I say someone, an internet service provider, like the ones we've been talking about. And if they were able to put up an antenna there, and they would have the ability to broadcast to the surrounding area, and how wide of an area they would be able to get to would be dependent on the size of the antenna and the kind of service that you want to provide. And keep in mind, that would be separate from the service that's going to the library, meaning it's not you could control that signal. People would have to have an authorization code because, again, the internet service provider is going to need to bill for that service. But anytime the CVIN network is going into an anchor tenant that is centrally located within a residential area or businesses. Again, I already know of one provider that's talking about taking the signal that's going into the Office of Education in Angels Camp and providing Calaveras Lumber with their internet signal right next door. So you're on the right track. There does create the ability to do that. Where the partnership comes from, and I'm not sure how directly the county would be involved with that. I think it's more removed because it is up to the independent business, the business being the internet service provider, to see value in providing that service. In other words, there's going to be the return on investment for them.
We would act as the facilitator for that.
Correct. Yeah.
The facilitator or the facility that hosts the tower?
Potentially, yes. Yeah.
We don't facilitate, but we don't have facilities. I mean, the Office of Ed is a
But you can lease.
We don't have a,
right. But any county-owned facilities, you could lease space to someone to put up a tower. And when I talk about a tower, I want to make sure everybody understands that this is, in many instances, you're talking. You could be talking something as simple as a satellite dish, a looking thing, a structure on the outside of the building. Some antennas can even be contained within the building. One of the sites that we put up when I was with Golden State was a 31-foot tower that over on Comage in Standard, over in Tuolumne, that it was an industrial part of town, not obtrusive, low height restrictions, etc. So there's a lot of things that you could do from county-owned facilities.
so we're not into building a middle mile anymore. We're going straight to the last mile.
Well, the middle mile is essentially CVIN.
Right.
So now we do need to do the last mile. I'm sorry?
We're making progress.
I guess
Absolutely.
I'm looking at what role can the county play? What role does the Board of Supervisors play?
Well, I think
because it's really critical. I mean, tower locations. I mean, we do that. Whether it's on private, I guess we could look at doing it on county facilities, of which we do not have very many, but they are available. The things that Spellman talked about, that's just joint pole agreements. We have electric, phone, cable on poles now. So
what you can do is what you're talking about right now. Brainstorming, networking, putting together this committee that was described and advocated to see what kind of ways the county could get involved with helping with this.
Yeah, that's what I would say is that, what I envision is, having you guys, the county, and, the other players, in the committee, hopefully, as a Calaveras specific committee to deal with what we're dealing with, not the whole region. Like AT&T, there's a woman up here, who was meeting with everybody, have her at the table. I don't know how that would work exactly, but, that's what I was envisioning in, Volcano for my part of the county. And so all the Mobley, and really, hash out how we can make it happen. Because to me, it seems like it's just an infrastructure problem. There's enough money out there if we put our brains together, and there's enough technology out there that we can cover the whole county. It's just a matter of getting the right people in the room at the right time.
Comcast does not negotiate.
Well, Comcast maybe is not going to be at that table, but we can invite them.
Or does AT&T?
Well, maybe.
No, I meant.
Snoozy
yes, Mr. Spellman.
Just a couple more additional things along the idea of swapping the telephone poles and power poles and like that. At least down the area where I'm at, CCWD, the water district, which is the largest one in the county, they own some prime locations where they have water towers located. Of course, because water flows downhill, you want to get the pressure. Most of those sites for the water towers are on higher peaks, where you could co-locate things, and I'm sure that they would be amenable to that since they took so much money from the resident streets and went to radio
Well,
streets. Might be a good PR
Mr.
thing.
Swama, we're not talking about, okay, fine.
The other thing is, the CAO mentioned here just, I think she was talking out loud to herself, but I heard, and that is we have road yards, for the road crews and things like that. We also have a series of, and I know Howard knows, we have a series of repeater towers and things like that that are used for law enforcement that could be co-opted. And they've obviously been placed in strategic locations so that our officers can use their laptops in their vehicles if they're within a certain parameter. And so, that's something also that we could co-opt. So I think that there's possibilities for Wi-Fi. And I agree with you. It's not what we really want, but it's better than what we've got right now. So it is a road, it's progressing towards what we want. It's making things better for the general populace, which I think would be an undeniable, effort in terms of trying to procure funding, grant or otherwise.
Can I say one more thing, which is that having kind of beat them up, I'm grateful that we have Comcast in Calaveras County. The system that they have is a very robust system, and for those that are fortunate enough to live, again, my son they're just down the street from him, and so he longs for Comcast. He would love to have that kind of coverage. So we're grateful. If we didn't have them, we'd be go out and lobbying on them and trying to get them to come here. So we're grateful for that.
So, excuse me, Ms. Slocum, I mean, this board did support Senate Bill 740. But are there other things that we should be doing to lobby? I know through RCRC or CSAC or directly that we could be doing?
Yes, potentially. There are, and again, I've never worked for a grant-funded agency before, so this is all kind of new to me. But what I'm discovering is that there are a variety of funding mechanisms out there, and there are absolutely people that are interested in satisfying the need that exists in rural communities. One that we worked on recently, and Mr. Stolman was instrumental in helping make this happen, was Google made $2 million available for, and that's $2 million is not a lot in the big scheme of things, but understand that this was a beta money. This was money is earmarked towards pursuing software improvements to aid in building out broadband infrastructure in rural communities. And they're doing that through an entity called De Novo, which is headed up by a gentleman who's a professor over UC Berkeley. And so we submitted a proposal. We said, please consider Calaveras County as we meet the criteria for that program. And we use Sky Ranch. We submitted Sky Ranch as an example of the community.
Sky High.
Sky High. I don't know why I keep... There must be a movie called Sky Ranch or something like that.
That's all right. If we can get it,
Sky High.
you can call us what you'd like.
Well, I don't think we're going to get it, unfortunately. I've already heard back from him. One of the criteria was that we needed to be within 250 miles of Berkeley so that their proximity to their people, their resources. And they've come back to me and said that they really appreciated our proposal, but they've had a couple of submittals from locations that are closer to them. I haven't given up on it. Don't focus too much on that. My point is there are these kind of things coming along that we can pursue, and that's part of what we do at Central Sierra Connect is to vet those out, uncover them, bring them forward. And so in those instances, we may very well be coming to you and asking you for support, and we appreciate all the support you've given us in the past. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time in that sometimes we don't get a lot of lead time. I think you saw that on the SB 740 thing where things were happening so quickly that on a Monday I'd say we need a letter by Friday to the governor, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, we're going to continue to look for those kind of things. USDA funding opportunities, BTOP grants, all of those, we are pursuing them and trying to find ones that gel, that fit for our area.
Are there any other questions? Were there any questions or comments from the public on this item? It's pretty obvious we're not going to get any economic prosperity until we have it. Steve, did you want to?
Quick comment. There's Steve Fairchild. The AARP magazine just recently did a survey of other countries. Out of 13 countries, the United States was last. They referred to our system as trickle band compared to other countries. People in Africa, in villages, in mud huts, have better internet than we do generally. It's not a good comment, I'm afraid. So.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the public on this topic? Mr. Stallman, did you have anything else you'd like to say and wrap it up?
Just like to thank Mr. Slocum for his presentation, and the board has always supported broadband, and I do appreciate that. I think there's a huge benefit to these types of presentations and to the committees that the board is considering forming. That will go a long way. As we look to other grant opportunities, I think the board needs to be poised to strike quickly on those grant opportunities. A lot of them do not offer a lot of lead time, as Mr. Slocum already said. So,
what about the ones we did in partnership with Alpine County? That was for cellular, wasn't it? For public safety.
The public safety one is more of a microwave, a point-to-point communication system, so not Wi-Fi. It is wireless by definition, but it is not a Wi-Fi network.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Spellman?
Chair Callaway brought up a good point earlier that we really don't have a lot of money to invest from our general fund for these types of things. However, having gone through many of these discussions before in terms of what the county can offer for matching dollars, there's often an ability for in-kind services or things to be donated in lieu of cash. And so I'm wondering if we applied for grants, if we couldn't use things like the sheriff's tower or the sheriff's towers or the CCWD water tower sites as kind of an in-kind, and normally that would be something that they would have to have a contractual obligation to pay, a fee for. And so if we were offering that at no charge contractually, that could be considered as in-kind donation for our match for a grant application.
Absolutely. CCWD, you brought them up a couple of times. We contracted with them when I was with Golden State, and we have cell sites located on a couple of their tanks. That's an excellent example of utilizing existing infrastructure. They, however, want to be paid. So if there's a way to mitigate that so that the internet service provider doesn't have to absorb that cost, then that increases the attractiveness of that particular scenario for them. Because at the end of the day, they're going to do the ROI and determine whether it's going to pay off for them to make that investment or not.
I think I'll be having that discussion.
Okay, Mr. Spellman Jr. or Slocum Jr., thank you for your help. Sorry.
So I wanted to make the board aware that the Volcano Telephone and Calaveras Telephone have, for the past several years, been very gracious. All of their hotspots, all of their communications facilities, they've equipped with wireless. They've made that available to our law enforcement agencies at no charge for several years. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank them. And we also are on some of the CCWD sites for our law enforcement telecommunications system. So they're very willing partners in this.
Yeah, Calaveras and Volcano have been pretty progressive.
Absolutely, very progressive. So thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I want to move to the next agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Appreciate it. Slocum and Slocum. Okay, who would like to go first?
Cliff.
Cliff would like to go first. Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
Or Spellman, one of the two that takes a long time.
Go ahead.
Okay, so on the 3rd, I attended BOS, or the BOS, Board of Supervisors forum at the library. It was a pretty good meeting, and I think it gave us a good chance to express our opinions on some of the things that we'd like to see as far as how we communicate, operations, what we're going to do, and that sort of thing. And it allowed the public to come in an informal setting, and I think it was a pretty productive meeting. On the 4th, Wednesday the 4th, I attended COG. Debbie was there, so you can report out if you want to. And so at the COG, there was a gentleman that came up that said that the county should consider raising taxes to be able to cover our expenses. And I'm in firm belief that we should be able to instead make it easier for businesses to come into the county and open up and operate and earn our tax dollars. So before we have to do anything like that. There was on Saturday, I attended the Valley Springs Parade, and that was a blast. I got to tell you that I was fortunate enough to be a judge there. So there was 3 of us sitting up there like little icicles, but after those little kids came down and was dancing in front of us with a lot less clothing that we were wearing, I didn't even feel sorry for myself at all. And they were smiling and having a great time. There was, I think, 25 entries, somewhere around there. It was a really fun event, and I am looking forward to next year. That night, Saturday night, at the terrace, they had the tree lighting and the awards for the trophies for the winners of the parade, which also was really fun. And Santa Claus came and in a fire truck, and there was quite a few people there, and they had little booths and they had music, and it was a blast. Very, very nice events. I wanted to thank Dana Nichols and Lori Norton and Dan Boyce at San Andreas Community Church for opening up a warming center. Okay.
Susan volunteered too.
Okay, so Susan was there. I didn't know that. But there was a community effort. I talked to Dana. I talked to Lori. And then I spoke with Dan on Saturday. And so appreciate that effort. We were in for some really record lows. It was really, everybody knows how cold it was out there. And in other communities, we hear people dying from hypothermia, and it didn't happen here. So, and I think that it could have if we didn't come together so quickly as a county, as a community, and help with these warming centers. So, thank you very much for that. And that's all I have.
Mr. Spellman?
In the interest of time, I'll skip with the formalities, but I am looking forward to the Commission on Aging luncheon today.
Okay. Mr. Wright?
Yeah, I'd also like to thank folks up in West Point and Lori for and everybody who was involved with the warming centers. I think that was a really important thing to have. I know that only a few people utilized it, but still, that really, it was really cold, especially up country. It was astoundingly cold, so I'm very thankful for that effort as well. I attended a child support agency meeting in Tuolumne County, community action agency meeting in Mariposa. It's the Calaveras Mariposa Action Agency, which I still find somewhat silly that we don't have a action agency that is next to our neighbors, Amador and Tuolumne. But they do a great job at getting funding to our local resources, especially the food bank and the resource center, Resource Connection Center for that. especially this time of year, the food bank is in need of everything they can get. So the action agency provides some of that funding for them. I also attended the Sierra Nevada Conservancy meeting, which has a rotating quarterly board meeting. This time it was in Jackson, so it was great. Didn't have to go very far for that. And there's a lot of work that's been done on the McCollum River watershed, and I'm hoping that that planning exercise that's been going on will actually turn out to have on-the-ground realities in funding for brush clearing and for really reducing the fire hazard. They've identified, which we all know, there's a huge understory there that hasn't been logged in decades and is a huge threat. And they've been comparing it to the rim fire next door and the real need for Calaveras County, and especially in the McCollum River watershed, because the partners are so easy to identify as East Bay mud as the primary water source for the entire East Bay. You have the McCollum River watershed there. So I'm hopeful that we've taken the first step at getting this planning work done, and over the next year or two we can actually get on-the-ground work and start to really thin those forests and reduce the fire hazard. I also attended the Mental Health Board meeting. One of the things I like about that agency, that board, is they started bringing in folks who work, staff that work in the mental health field, and describing how they go about doing their job. So the board is getting educated by people who are doing the actual work, and I think that's been really educational to me. So I do appreciate that tremendously. And there's a bunch of Christmas things happening this weekend throughout District 2, and encourage everybody to attend as many as possible, and hopefully it won't be quite as freezing this weekend as last.
Supervisor Ponte.
Thank you. As Cliff mentioned, there was a COG meeting last week, and the COG will not be meeting again until February, but at the COG meeting we did have a series of interviews for potential board members. There were 7 applicants and 3 board members, plus an alternative was selected. In addition to that, we heard an update again about the 1226 project, as well as the Wagon Trail project. Highway 1226 continues to move forward. Some opportunities coming up here shortly to be able to move that project along, and I think was construction talked about April, June from a COG perspective, I believe was kind of the time frame there. And on the Highway 4 project, we continue the environmental study of that project and looking at funding. We recently signed an agreement with Amador County and Alpine County, which will help fund portions of the construction project for COG in future years. I think 2017 was a year that comes to mind, which basically reintroduced a cooperative effort among other member agencies out of county that was introduced many years ago, 10 years ago maybe, when it was the Highway 4 project in Angels Camp, and that was a cooperative effort of different COG agencies. So we have mended some bridges and built some new opportunities, and it's close to $2 million in funding from both Amador County and Alpine County. So that was introduced by COG and various agreements signed off there. So that supports the Wagon Trail project. There's an EMS meeting next week, and that, as far as I know right now, it'll be held in Copperopolis, and that's the Emergency Medical Services Committee. I want to thank Lori and crew, too, in regards to working with CERT in regards to the warming centers. It's kind of a last-minute ditch effort, I think, to get something up and going, but I think it also, for me, it brought to my mind that we really don't have anything officially or formally in place to do something like this. And so I think it's something that we need to take a look at. I know that there's opportunities if there was a major wildfire that comes through, or a major flood, or something quite drastic, but something as simple as a warming center, I know took a lot of effort on many people's parts. So I certainly would like to take a look at that to make it a little easier. Maybe we need to look at our communities and look at a designated emergency place in all of our communities, so that if something like this should happen, maybe next time around it's a heat wave and we need cooling centers, that we have something a little bit easier in place. So I don't know where that fits in. Maybe, I hate to add to that list of board priorities in 2014, but anyway, I just saw that, just brought to my mind that there was really nothing in place. And so I certainly thank Dana and Susan and other members that opened up these warming centers and staffed them through this past weekend. And the power of Facebook, because that's how I first learned about it. And, it was interesting to hear comments on Facebook in regards to this. And then, of course, it was in other arenas, but it was very interesting to hear how the Facebook process was working in that regards. Santa's Express, I know there's still a need, and encourage people to be as supportive as they can for that. There are many canned food drives going on, and appreciate those who support the process as well as the donations into Santa's Express. We, when Cliff, I'll go back to COG, when there was a representative at COG who spoke in regards to how communities were raising taxes, primarily sales tax is what was discussed, when it was a community-specific goal, i.e. we want to maintain or build a road or infrastructure related to roads in this particular example, and how, that it was voted upon and approved in this particular community. Others communities didn't fare so well when they tried those kinds of things, but it was an interesting perspective to hear how this one community was successful in that particular endeavor to raise the sales tax and have a portion of that sales tax go to something specific as roads. And when it was a very specific project, it seemed to be a little bit better embraced. And the one thing I found interesting is that there was also a citizen review committee that was part of this process. So it was the citizenry that would be more or less overseeing that particular sales tax increase and how it was being used and reporting back to an official board. So kind of an interesting thing there. But I, like Cliff, would like to see our processes in place, which leads to the general plan. Continue moving forward on that, and I can't wait for January to come about to hear from the planning department's perspective where we are in that process and where we're going forward in the future for 2014. And although I like the holidays, I just, seeing the warming centers and seeing what was going out there, the holiday season is not always a ho-ho for most people, so please keep that in mind. And as we're spreading good cheer, there are many others who, for whatever reason, don't see the holidays as others do. So I think keeping that in mind is very important. And I would just like to close with thanking those who put me in this chair this last year. And it's been an interesting year, a good learning curve year, much more to learn. And I just look forward to this next year, and I look forward to our first meeting in January as we set up some priorities and goals and objectives for this board, and hopefully we'll have a vision that we can put out there for others to follow, and certainly look forward to that general plan and getting it done in 2014. Thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be done.
It is. 2014 is the year.
On RCRC, we voted in Humboldt County as a member county for RCRC. They had been at one time, left, and they came back. The home buyers program through RCRC, which is used throughout California and in other states now, they're looking at doing the PACE program. If you remember, the PACE program was where people could do energy efficiency and put the cost of the project on their property tax bill, and it would be paid off over, I think in Sonoma, was it 20-year period? 30-year periods with the, and they were one of the first at Berkeley, I think, and Calaveras couldn't afford to do it, so we were going to join a consortium of counties, and then Freddie Mae and Freddie Mac put a squash on it. Anyhow, it's starting to come back, and it would be very advantageous to property owners. Hopefully, it'll be residential and commercial that can participate in the PACE program. The CSAC and RCRC are also lobbying the state on PILT funding for fish and wildlife. I don't think it affects Calaveras County, but as you know, we have PILT funding we did have it for the Forest Service. Well, Department of Fish and Game also has land, and we're, of course, losing out on those property taxes, and they are supposed to fund the counties where they're located, and it's another one of the state gets the money and we don't. I have an Area 12 agency, an aging meeting this week. I'll be going to the memorial for Frank Juffa. Juffa, those of you remember him, he had the bakery in San Andreas, made the best raisin Danish I have ever had. And his wife used to be a clerk to the Board of Supervisors. I'll be going to the Bear Valley Historic Night. They're going to be recognizing women in sports. I'm not one of them, even though I've been skiing at Bear Valley for many, many years. I went to the graduation, the first graduation from people from the Day Reporting Center at camps. It's always pretty moving to go. It's not my world. It's not something I am part of, but I was there. Judge Mawhinney was there, and these are the 109ers who most of them had been released from prison. As I understood their stories, as they told them, most of them it's drugs. One man said, I'm 29 and I just got my driver's license for the first time. They all have jobs, and maybe not all of them will succeed, but hopefully most of them will, and those are people that will not be going back into the criminal justice system. So if you all have the opportunity to ever attend one, I recommend it. I will be going to the Courage to Change graduation this week. I don't want anybody to laugh, but I'm going to be interviewed by the Taxpayers Association. That ought to be good.
Where do you stand on taxes, Marina?
Where do I stand? Tax and spend, of course. And I also want to, I have a LAFCO meeting also, and we have a CSCS, do we have one? I have it down on the 16th. Oh, I guess I don't have one.
I thought they canceled LAFCO.
They canceled LAFCO?
I thought they did.
I just got an agenda packet.
They did?
Huh?
Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I haven't either. So, Mr. Spellman,
I'll probably be going.
You're-
Yeah, I think we still do have a chance to put it in.
meeting on the
I think so.
16th, and a LAFCO one on the 16th also. Anyway, on Christmas Day, I see our assessor back here. She and her husband are volunteers at the Christmas Day dinner. It's been going on for about 30 years, and we deliver meals as well as have it people who come, and the jail cooks some of the turkeys for us, and I welcome people to come. It's a real community event on Christmas Day. And I think that's it.
Let me see one more thing.
Yes.
So as you're out there shopping for holiday season, please try to shop local. There are many great little shops around, little businesses. We have a new business, well, it's not a new business, but an expanded business in Valley Springs, that being Cinder's Market, and that's a really cool store, and they have a lot of stuff there.
You can always go to the one in Mountain Ranch if you live in District 2.
That's right. I just said expanded.
Yeah.
So I actually go to the Mountain Ranch quite a bit because I know I'm up there a lot. But remember to shop local because that keeps our tax dollars here in the county. And I mean, and if at all possible, while you're out shopping local, stop at your local restaurants too and have something to eat. The other night, my wife and I went to a movie up in Angels Camp, and we had dinner at Sidewinders, and it was great. I mean, we liked it a lot. So we have great things here in the county. So thank you very much.
That's a strong ditto. Thank you, Cliff.
I recommend going to camps before the movie. They have jazz usually on Friday nights.
Just shop local.
2 quick items. First of all, thank you for the appreciation statements of appreciations about the warming shelter. Can't miss the opportunity, though, to say that without Dennis Lewis and the CERT folks, it would not have happened. Amazed at the number of county employees on very short notice that were willing to come in and spend the night in order to make that happen. And I do have it on my list of tasks. We do have no protocol, so we were flying without policy or permission. We need, I think, a protocol for something that doesn't quite rise to the level of a disaster. We don't need to involve the sheriff and the OES. I'm going to work with behavioral health and human services to see if we can't be the convener or facilitator of a discussion about what role we can play, because I think that they would have been far more broadly used if the word was out sooner, and in many cases you have to go out and seek the folks to bring them in. They may not seek you out. So,
that's absolutely true.
so it is on the list. Secondly, we discussed at the meeting on December 3rd the desire to have another facilitated conversation. I have lined up Bill Shiat for January 7th. We will be planning for a 9 to 4 period of time in the Sequoia room for him to meet with us and continue that dialogue, and I appreciate that. January 7th.
Tuesday.
It is a Tuesday.
Starting at 9, you said?
I'd like you to reserve 9 to 4. We may actually make it a little shorter than that, but I think that's about the time it would be.
Council? Anything? Ms. Sever? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, going with your policy that you asked departments to make their announcements at the end of the meeting, I do have 3 things I want to discuss with you very briefly. This is a season for giving thanks and counting our blessings, and as department heads, we really give thanks and count on our staff to do their jobs every day in the best possible way. The elected department heads, including the District Attorney Barbara Uke, Treasurer Tax Collector Barbara Sullivan, Clerk Recorder Madeline Kurska, District Attorney Barbara Uke, and I will be hosting a holiday open house tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in the lobby of the administration building, which is our building across the quad. I'm going to check and see if our Christmas tree will still go up. We haven't put it up in a couple of years for a lot of different reasons, and we'll have cookies, some coffee, and cider until we run out, or until we say, all right, that's it, we're done. So we'd like to invite you, since you certainly are part of our county family, and we do, whether we argue occasionally or not, give thanks to each of you as well. I also want to remind you, since you were talking about food bank, we do have a food bank donation box in the lobby of my office and some of the other offices over in the administration building. So if you're coming back tomorrow, and Joe, I know you'll be in the office tomorrow, perhaps you could bring a can of food or 2 and deposit it in that box. And finally, on the, I'm going to call it bad news side, depending on where you are. Good news if you're a taxpayer, bad news if you're a public agency. Although the State Board of Equalization has not yet formally announced the increase in the inflation factor for next year, I can tell you that it will be less than 1/2%. So if anybody was planning on factored base year values increasing by that 2% number, it will be less than 1/4 of that increase on those parcels that are still running forward with the factored base year value.
Less than 1%?
Less than 1/2 of 1%.
Holy.
So we're expecting the letter, but I can do math, and you would certainly hope I can as the assessor. The calculation is less than 1/2 of 1%. And I thought you should know that sooner rather than later. And for the CAO, since I will not be at your Finance Committee meeting this week, thought you should know it as well.
That, just to clarify, that information is regarding properties that are already at their maximum assessed value?
Correct.
So we're not talking about catch-up properties, ones that were under?
No. Any property that is in decline in value status, if its value is increasing, it can be increased more than the 2% limitation if the market is increasing that much, but there's no guarantee of that either. And as you know, given our workflow, we usually don't start looking at that until the end of our work year, which will be late May, June. Okay?
What time was that open
10
house
o'clock.
tomorrow? 10?
Cookies, hopefully
I'm
some
at area
coffee.
12, sorry.
All right.
But if I could come by and pick up some cookies on my way.
No.
Yeah, you got a to-go
You
bag?
can have a cookie and then head on down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Christmas
time.
Day. Thank
You will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this means adjourned, this board. I know how many of you are going to the Commission on Aging luncheon. Chris?
I am going.
Yep, yes, Debbie? Are you
Yes.
going? Spellman? No. Are you going to the Commission on Aging
Yes, ma'am.
luncheon? There'll be 5 of us attending the Commission on Aging luncheon. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.